Good morning, everybody. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about how to create a message queue, a messaging queue in React.js. So usually I implement it in a way that I have three different types of messages. One is an info message, then the second one is an error, and then the third one is a success message. And yeah, in addition to the messages disappearing after a time, I like to implement a close button so that the user, well, a close icon, so that the user can click them away. Yeah, so there is a GitHub repository for this video if you want to see the finished result. Yeah, feel free to check this repository out. Or if you want to code along, just start with the React starter template, and then you should be fine. So the content of this video is split into three parts basically. One is creating an overlay, a wrapper component. Second one, creating the actual item components. And then the third one is the state management, which consists mainly of adding items and then removing items. And then, yeah, how that is properly split up into separate files. Okay, hope you enjoy the video and let's get started. You can just open up the React starter template or create one yourself. At least that's what I did. So I'm starting pretty much with an empty React app, and then just gonna yarn dev to start that in the terminal, and that is all we need to get started. So we're gonna start, as I said, with the overlay and wrapper component. There's nothing crazy that goes into that, but yeah. So let's do it. I'm gonna create a new folder here. Maybe let's call that message queue. So this is gonna contain everything that we need. Have an index.jsx, there we go. And then message queue. And also, well, utils.js or provider. I don't know, there's different naming options that we can use, but here later on I'm gonna have the state management. So in here there's gonna be one more, an item component. So these two are only presentational, but they're not gonna be holding state. Why is that? Because so we're gonna call that, or we're gonna put that component here, and then pass the state in there. Now we need to have it in the application, like in the uppermost spot in our app, in order for us to be able to pass down a function to other components, so we can add new messages. So I'm just gonna have a lot of pseudocode here. So it's gonna be something like add message, remove message, and then messages is use message queue. So we're gonna build our own message queue here, our own hook that gives us these three variables, right? Add message to add a new message, removing a message if we want to, and then also an array of the current messages. So yeah, if we had that in the message queue itself, there would be no way to bring, for example, the add message function into other components. So let's say we do something here. So we're gonna have our message queue here. Maybe I'm going a little bit backwards right now, but hopefully you can follow me a little bit. Just gonna import that real quick. Import message queue from message queue. There we go. Okay, so let's say in our message queue we had that state management. There would be no way to go up with that, to bring that function up and then inside some other stuff that we have here. So maybe we're gonna have a button that add new message or whatever, and then on click we want to do something, right? We want to add a message. There would be no way to bring this function here from the message queue up to the application and down to other components. So that's why I want to extract the state handling into this provider that we can then call separately in the application. Application components, so we can pass down the add message. But yeah, maybe I'm going a little bit backwards here right now, just trying to explain why I'm setting it up in this way. We're gonna do that later on. First, let's just create the message queue and have dummy data so we can see what's going on. Okay. So going back to the message queue, there we go. So what I'm thinking is these should appear in the upper right corner or something like that, a stack of messages, or a queue of messages, so that there's one message here and another message here and so on, and just a whole list basically. And then you can click them away and whatnot. So we need to have a container that lets us put the individual items below each other. So let me just create that. And yeah, I'm using styled components for styling. If you don't know what that is, don't worry, it's basically CSS, called CSS in JS. But yeah, you should be able to read it. Now here, since I'm putting the message queue in the topmost part of the app, there's no need for me to use a portal. I have a video about modals and portals and why you would want to use them. That's a separate video. Feel free to check that out. But here we don't need that, as it is in the topmost part of the application, the root level, let's say. Okay, so here I'm gonna have const styled message queue. Okay, is styled just a div, right? And then we're gonna have position fixed, top 0, right 0. Let's give it a width for now. I'm gonna remove that later on probably, but still. Width 200 pixels, height 200 pixels, just so we know what we're working with. Border 1 pixel, like red, and then display flex and make that a column. Okay, so we're gonna have that styled message queue. Okay, and there we go. We have that here. Perfect. Well, it's just a placeholder for now, but yeah, we can use that in a bit to put our items in here. Okay, so let's have the messages, and we're gonna have a default value. There again, I did have a video, I think that was about destructuring, where I explained default values, so feel free to check that out. But yeah, I'm just gonna, for now, since we don't have the actual state, I'm just gonna have a couple of items. So type info and then message ABC, whatever. And we're gonna add 2 more types probably later on. Info, success, green, and then error, which is red, usually. But yeah. And then we're gonna map over the messages. Messages.map. And well, actually, let's also give it an ID. That also, we're gonna do that at a later time when we implement the state. But yeah, just for now, so we can map over that correctly. So we can messages.map, and we have a message, and then we return a message item. Well, we just call it item here. Okay, there we go. This is the automatic import, which works, sometimes works well. So we do have the item, and we pass down that message object. and also give it a key because we're mapping over it, and we're going to give that the message.id. Very well. Now we don't have anything inside here, so maybe just have the message.id for now. Okay. And then it seems like we do have some kind of error. Let's see what's going on there. Messages.map is not a function. Messages equals, okay, why is that not a function? It should be an array. Let's see. So messages is, oh, yeah, well, forgot the destructuring. Very well. Okay, yeah, we do have the messages that we can access now. We pass them down, map over them, and then our item is gonna take care of the actual content that is being displayed. We're gonna style that in a bit, but for now, yeah, we do have it in a correct place, so that's very good. Now maybe let's add two more, the other types. So error. This is an error. Okay, and then also success message. Yay, this worked. Perfect. Okay, well, it's not quite what we want yet, but we have yet to style it. Okay, let's go ahead and do the item. So there again, I'm gonna import styled components, and then the wrapper, let's say, is also div, and then maybe give it a padding first, padding, and then a margin bottom, maybe 10 pixels. We're gonna see a border radius 3 pixels, whatever you want. Okay, and then we're gonna return that wrapper. Right now, okay, they're spaced out a little bit better. That's quite nice. And then let's give it a background color. Let's give it a red for now, so that we have action items. Perfect. Now let's go back here and remove that border. Very good. Very, very good. Now for the first one, I might want to push that down because otherwise it's just like at the very top of our screen or of our window. So for that, I'm going to go into the style message queue and give it a padding top, which is 10 pixels as well. Okay, very nice. Now back to the item. So what I was thinking of is to have an item, well, the message here. So we do have our actual message that should be displayed. Have that on the left side, and then have an X icon on the right side so that the user can click on it if he doesn't want to see it anymore. And then in addition to that, we're going to have a timeout so that it disappears automatically after a certain amount of seconds. Okay, there we go. And then, yeah, what? Okay, so there's a couple of things to do. First, let's maybe fix the message, right? We don't want to display the message ID, but rather we want to display the message itself, the message to message. Well, let's maybe call that caption. And then here we're going to have message.caption. So we don't, okay, there we go. Just need to save it so we don't get confused with the naming here. And then let's go ahead and change the color based on the actual type of the message. So we do have a message.type that we declared earlier, info error success. And later on we're gonna use that, but for now let's create some functionality to display the correct color. So if props dot type equals success, then return. I'm just gonna plug in some colors that I already use. So this is a nice success color, and then error would be something like this. And then by default, we're gonna just return a blue for info. You can use whatever colors you want, obviously. But yeah, I like those. And then we still need to pass the type to that style component. So that's going to be message.type. Remember, we do have an object. One message is an object with ID, type, caption. Maybe we're going to add more, but yeah, for now I think that's okay. And then, props.type is our, okay, there we go. And then we do have these 3 different colors. Nice. We might want to change the text color. So color, just gonna make that white, and I think that that works for everyone, for all of them. Maybe also give it a box shadow, 0, 3 pixels, 3 pixels, 3 pixels. Something like this. Oh well, that's a little bit too much. Nope. Okay, this looks good. Just very subtle. But yeah. And then also, I just noticed that we have some space at the top, but we might also want to add some space on the right side. Otherwise, it looks a little bit weird. So we're going to have a padding right in the wrapper as well. Okay, there we go. This is what I like. Very well. Next up, I'm thinking, based on the content of that, it might get very long, right? So if let me grab a paragraph or something. If I put something inside here, well, actually that works already because I put width 200. I can remove that, and then it's going to take up the whole screen, which is not quite what we want. So we could have, maybe have it here that we say the max width, and the children, the items, are going to adapt to that. So the max width maybe is going to be 400 pixels. Okay, something like this. Maybe even a little bit less, 350. Okay, and then min width, maybe 100 pixels. So if we have very small ones, it's not just like 25 pixels or something like that. And then we just simply make all items stretch the whole width. Well, I think that's the default for flex direction column, but still, just to make sure. Okay, yeah, that looks pretty good actually already. And then if we add some more here, just one sentence, add some more here. Yeah, we simply add it at the bottom. So you can see later on, if we push a new object like this into this array, messages array, it's going to appear on the page, which is very good. But we're not quite there yet. Let's implement like an X or whatever, so we can later on click on that to close it. So the wrapper, I'm gonna have a close icon, which I prepared here, PNG. I'm gonna pull that in, close icon from assets, close PNG, and then yeah. I'm gonna have an image width. Just gonna go with 24 pixels. We're gonna see if that works well, and then gonna have that here. The icon source is gonna be the close icon. Let's see. Well, that didn't work. Let's see. Source. Oh, there we go. Okay, just reloading the page. Very well. No, that doesn't look too great. We do want to have, well, I do want to have that on this side, on the right side. And then we want to have the text next to it and also a little bit of spacing. So I'm gonna do here is display flex. And here we don't want to wrap it to the next line. Okay, well, interesting. That's not what we want. We want align items, center and not stretch. Okay, there we go. And then in addition to that, justify content, space between to make this go to the end. Okay, I have a little bit of a typo here. Justify content. Okay, perfect. Flex space between. Very good. Now there is just that last thing that we want to have a little bit of spacing here if the text gets a little bit longer. So that for that, I'm gonna have the margin left 15 pixels here. Okay, and that is it. And then we do want to have we want to click it, right? So we do want to have a different cursor. We're gonna have cursor pointer. There we go. And then it looks like we can click on it. We can't click on it yet, but later on we will be able to do so. So we prepared that, the styling at least. Okay. Now, yeah, I mean, that looks pretty nice already. Yeah, I think we can start the state management here. And yeah, and see how we can make that a little bit more dynamic. Okay, so I'm gonna put that here in the provider. And as I said, I'm gonna create a hook that returns an object with these three things. So export default function use message queue. And then I'm gonna have React and use state. Yeah, use state here from React. Okay, very well. Okay, and then yeah, I was thinking maybe we should have a default messages or something like that, but actually I don't think we need that. Okay, so we're gonna have the messages, right? Set messages is use state, just an empty array. And then what we're gonna have, well, I said we're gonna have an add message. Well, maybe just return that. So I know I want to return that. I'm just going to return an object with these. So now we just need to implement the add message, remove message, and messages. Function add message. We're going to see what that is. Function remove message. Okay, there we go. And then message. Well, yeah, the messages we already have, right? That's our state. So add messages, the function is going to be a function to add messages here, which is calling set messages, right? But we need to maybe add an ID, map the things a little bit, put it in at the correct order. So we don't want to just return set messages. We want to abstract a little bit so that it's easier to use later on to simply call add messages, add message. So what I like to do here is simply the caption and then the type. And by default, it's gonna be of type info, right? So later on, we can call add message. Oops, add message. Come on, add message. There we go. And then some new message. And then if we just call it like this, type is gonna be info, right? And if I call it like this, it's gonna be an error. So it really is up to me, but it's really easy to use. And then later on, we're also gonna have a timeout, and I'm just gonna have 3000 here, right? As default, so 3 seconds. You can put whatever you want here. You can play around with that a little bit, but I found it to be a good value for the user to read the message. Okay, so what we're gonna do when we call the add message, we're gonna say we're gonna use our state, but modify our state. So adding one more object to it, and ideally in the beginning. So new messages, we don't want them to come down here. Maybe we want it, but I think we rather want them to come to the top of the message queue. And then at the bottom, they kind of like disappear. Okay, so what we want to do here is set messages. And then we're going to have a new object, ID. We don't know what that is yet. We're going to have to come up with an ID. Type is what we pass, right? So type is info, error, or success. And then we are going to have the caption and also the timeout. So timeout in milliseconds. We're going to use that later to remove it automatically. Okay, so that is it. And then we're going to have the remove message. And here I think we're just going to use the ID. And then set messages is messages.filter. And then message.id is not equal to ID that we're trying to filter out. Okay, so everything that has not the same ID stays in, everything else goes out. Very good. We have yet to test that, but I think that should work. Okay, and just with that, I think we do have everything that we need, and we can start using it. Now, yeah, we need an ID. There's different ways. Let me pull in UID npm. This is just a package to create random IDs, random unique IDs. So I'm gonna go yarn add UID. There we go. And start the server again. And then how to use that is import before as whatever you want to call it, UID from UID. Okay, there we go. And then we're gonna just create a new unique ID every time we push a new message. Really, it's not, I mean, we're not using that to communicate with a backend or something like that, so it can't just be random. It's just so we know later on if we want to remove that, which one it is. Yeah, and I think as far as the state management goes, that is it. So yeah, let's use that. So use message queue. Well, we actually already did that. And then message queue. So I'm gonna do a nice thing, and then since it comes from the same module, basically, I'm gonna route that to, well, export it from the same module. I can import it here, or well, export it, export default as from provider, right? So I do have, just recapping, I do have one function that is a default export in this file, the provider file. And then in the message queue index file, I'm exporting the message queue component. And in addition to that, now I have a named export called use message queue, which is our state management from the provider. So I can simply do this, import message queue, the message queue component, and then also the state management hook that we just built from message queue. Okay, and gonna remove that, well, uncomment that, and yeah, we now have the hook and the elements that we can start using. So the message queue, let's go back here, expects an array. So I'm not gonna have the default values in there anymore, because now I want to pass them from here, right? From our state management. So I'm gonna pass the messages from our state management. Now this is empty right now, but I can then say use effect maybe just to test use effect, and when it mounts, we're gonna have a new message. Maybe have a timeout as well. After 1 second, add a new message with the caption, hello, it works. We're not going to put anything, so we're going to see that the type is going to be info and timeout is 3000, which we don't use yet, but we will in a bit. Okay, there we go. I reload the page, and then after a second, we do have this nice message here, this notification. I'm going to have 2 more just to have the different types. So type success and error. Oh no, there's something wrong, and yay. Okay, there we go. Oh, let's reload the page. Yep. Okay, there we go. Well, there is a little bit of a problem because it's replacing it. I think I forgot something here. Yeah, I'm just setting the messages to one object. I forgot to still set the other messages. So I'm gonna go ahead and set the old messages again. And then let's see how it works. Yeah, oh, well, still not working. Let's see. Add message. Okay. That is an empty array every time. That's interesting. Okay. Maybe that has something to do with the timeouts, but I don't think so. That shouldn't be the case. Actually, it might be. So I think what's going on there is this add message function. Okay, well, this is a little bit of a React thing. This add message function is being created every time this is being called. So this is called when the messages change. Now, and that is then returned. So we use that in here, the add message function. But we only call that, we kind of like saving the function for later usage. But at the time, the add message function will be the function where the messages is still empty. So I think that's what's going on. Okay, well, yeah, that's a little bit of a mishap. Shouldn't be happening in a real app, because this is like just a sample thing. So let me move that. There's also different ways to test that now. So let me move that. So basically what we want to do is we want to have the up-to-date add message function. So this empty hook here only is being called once. That's why the add message function is not the same. Well, it's the same. That's exactly the problem. It's not the updated add message function. At least I think so. Not 100% sure, but I think so. So let's actually use our button here to add new messages. Let's just say if there's one message, if messages.length is 0, we're gonna have an info. Okay. So if there's one, let's use this one, the module. Basically, if there's 0, 3, 6, and so on, messages in the queue, then I'm just gonna have that. Later on, hopefully that's gonna be something with an actual use case so that it's always the same message. But here for testing purposes, I'm just gonna have that switch. If messages.length modulo 3 equals 1, then we're gonna have an error. Yeah, why not? And then else we're gonna have a success message. Let's see if that works. Yeah, there we go. Okay. And now I can make a little bit of a weird rainbow here. But yeah. And that is because I do not remove the messages anymore, the items. So yeah, I mean, it looks it looks funky, but it is functional as well. But let's go on to the next step and remove the individual items. Now there's two triggers that we want to have to remove them. One is simply with a timeout, and then the second one is by clicking on it. So let's create the first one. Well, the second one, the button click. Well, the icon click. So we do have the remove message function here, and we simply need to pass an ID. So what I would do is we pass that function down to the message queue itself, to the component. So remove item, remove message is just remove message. Just gonna be the same name. And then we can access that in the props, remove message, and then pass it down to the item. There we go. And then in the item, we can say on clicking the icon, we can call that function with the message.id. Okay, let's see if that works. First, I'm going to add messages, and then I'm going to remove that, remove that, remove that. Very well. Works perfectly fine. So maybe that was a little bit quick earlier. The remove message takes in an ID, and then it's simply going to set the messages to all the messages except the one with the matching ID, right? Okay. So that is working well. There we go. And then I can remove those again. Very nice. And then, yeah, let's do the timeout. And I think, so I was thinking to do it in a certain way, but it turns out that didn't really work out that well because of the same issue. Which is that whenever you call that remove message function, the messages are actually outdated, or something along those lines. And that happens with setting timeouts. So I played a little bit around with that, and I actually came across this article, which explains it quite well. So feel free to check it out. But yeah, okay, so the way around that is to use a ref, which is a value holder that doesn't trigger side effects or anything like that. Side effects, something like a use effect or whatever. Yeah, in the end, we simply assign the current value the messages. So every time this is being updated, the current value of the reference is updated, and then we use that to remove items. So that way we always have the most up-to-date value rather than the, let's say, saved value when that message, when that function was created. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Well, okay, so the way to a way to implement that the timeout is that when creating a new message, so when adding it to the queue, well, we also create a new timeout and a timeout function that calls remove message with that ID, right? And then we pass in the timeout value, 3000. I tried earlier, well, I cut that out of the video, but I tried earlier to have that in here. And now that would probably work, but in the meantime, I changed that to here, and that works perfectly fine, so I'm not going to change that back. Yeah, so you could also do that probably here with an use effect. Use effect, something like this. And then you create a timeout that calls that remove message function. But so far, I mean, that's working perfectly fine, and I don't see the need to change that. Okay, so yeah. We're setting a timeout to remove the message when we actually create it, right? And then, yeah, the remove message function is basically the same, except that we're accessing the actual up-to-date messages every time. Okay, well, that I think wraps up the video. Not quite. Maybe just one more thing, that here, this obviously is just our testing stuff. So you would hopefully call that function based on something else. So maybe you would have an API request that comes in with an error, then you would call this, right, with your error message. Or you would have something, I don't know, yeah, an API request that comes in successful, meaning the data was saved or whatever it is, right? And then you would call this depending on where that is, right? So here I'm just calling that in the same spot, but yeah, you would probably not want to do that. You would use that in a specific place in your code base or in a specific scenario. Yeah, so that now is it. Yeah, let me know how you liked it, and feel free to check out the repository here. The code is going to be accessible there, and then yeah, see you in the next video.